What's up, guys? It's Mr. SLIN. Those of you guys who know me know that I am a huge fan of MMORPGs. I've been playing MMOs since I was a kid, and I probably have as many hours in MMOs as I have in TF2. Probably over 10,000 hours in MMOs. I remember it was like 4th grade, and all the kids in computer class were playing classic Runescape. And then, of course, we played Guild Wars 1 and Star Wars Galaxies and Guild Wars 2, of course, and I played so many hours of World of Warcraft, like basically every expansion. And I've done what I need to do in all those MMOs as well. I did Mythic Raiding, I did PvP, and so I have a lot of experience in MMOs, and that's why I'm so excited about the upcoming launch of New World. It's probably the biggest MMO that's going to get launched this year, like new IP, new MMO. Not like an existing top 10 MMO that's getting an expansion, although with Guild Wars 2, they just announced that they're going to push the new expansion to next year. But, you know, as I follow the MMO news, New World is the one that stuck out to me as like, oh my God, this is the hype game. And I just started streaming it yesterday when the closed beta released, and I played about 5 hours. And so I want to share my thoughts with you on New World and whether or not it's worth it to play this game. And the question I got the most in the chat was, you know, how does this game compare to World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV? And so I want to go into that in this video, and I kind of laid out some of my thoughts for you here. So here are my 5 differences between the games and why I think that you should try and play New World. The first is the combat. It's a very obvious difference, but it's not tab-targeted combat. So whereas WoW, Final Fantasy XIV, and all those WoW clones are tab-targeted, this game is not tab-targeted. There is an aiming reticule, there is a crosshair that you actually need to aim what you're doing, and there's also blocking, and there's dodge rolls and that kind of thing. And I've never played Dark Souls, but I heard that this combat is basically similar to Dark Souls. But as someone who's never played Dark Souls, what I notice is the main difference is just the type of activity, like the amount of attention that you have to pay to the combat is way more than other MMOs. I just got finished playing a couple weeks of WoW Classic, and that game, you can just feel like the differences. Like it's just so different. In WoW, you tab onto the enemy, and then you just start like mashing your different spells as fast as you can, and then you kind of just zone out. Like I'm just kind of like staring, and like it just attacks for me basically. Whereas in New World, I actually have to pay attention to what's going on, whether I'm playing melee and I actually have to swing either light attacks or heavy attacks, or I'm actively dodging. Like in WoW, you get like a dodge percentage chance. You just sit there and there's like a percentage chance to dodge. But in New World, if you don't actively try and dodge, you know, it's like you're just gonna get hit over and over again. So you actually have to pay attention to the combat. And I find that like really engaging. I'm not sure which one is better. It's just different. And in a world in where I've played so many MMOs that are like WoW, like Final Fantasy XIV, it's a breath of fresh air to have that new combat system in New World. It kind of reminds me of like Destiny 2, where you know the combat is extremely different because it's obviously Destiny is like an FPS game, but it's still got all those MMO feelings and you know, making your character stronger and questing and dungeons and raids and the kind of stuff that you would expect in an MMO. I feel like New World has that kind of stuff, or that stuff is planned, while also kind of bringing this fresh combat take. Like one thing that stuck out to me in the combat is that in WoW, if you're a caster, you stand at maximum range and then you just like spam your ability, right? Your ranged attacks. In New World, if I'm playing a ranged caster, it's like shooting a projectile that I have to actually aim. Like I feel a little bit like an FPS game. Like I actually have to aim that attack. And since it's a projectile, I have to lead that attack. If the dude is running sideways to me, I have to like kind of aim in front of them to hit that attack. And also, the farther I am away from the target, the harder it is to hit that shot. So being closer as a ranged DPS makes my accuracy higher versus being really far away. And I just find that to be like really like fresh, you know? And I find it, at least having played 5 hours of it, you know, let's ask me again in a week. But right now I'm feeling like, wow, this is really cool. That's the first thing. Second thing is the feeling of the MMO is fresh and modern. Whereas WoW and Final Fantasy have been out for a long time, and so you can kind of feel the age of the UI and the user experience, and it can feel dated at times. Especially if you play like any of the top 10 MMOs, like Elder Scrolls, Black Desert Online. I just feel like some of those UIs, I'm not a big fan of those. They feel really aged and dated. I like the UI in New World. I like the feeling of it. It feels very crisp. There's a lot of new things that they're bringing to the experience that I would expect out of a modern MMO. One of the things that really struck me was the voice chat integration. So as you're speaking in the game, it'll put a little speaker over your head and you can tell who's talking around and you can hear voices around you. And this really didn't strike me until about like an hour into the game. You walk into like the first big town, the first big like city feeling place where everybody's congregated and like there's tons of people there because the game just came out. And there's all these people that are voice talking to each other and there's all these different conversations going on. And I felt like, this sounds really cheesy, but I felt like I was in a market, you know, like in a real life market where people are kind of, there's chatter all around me. And if I heard a conversation, I could like join that conversation. And it was just kind of cool to have that vibe. And the way that the combat works in this game is that there's no mob tagging, which means that like anybody can shoot a mob to get experience. And so when I'm running around in the world, like if we're both fighting something, and then I'll just like go like, oh, thanks man for saving me there, or like, you know, we're PvPing, some dude tries to gank me, some dude helps me out, and then he's like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And we're all like, it's just like in the moment voice chat, and that feels amazing, you know. And like I don't get those experiences when I played other MMOs, especially a lot of MMOs which you kind of like play solo, even though it's an MMO. You know what I'm talking about, where like you're questing, but it feels like you're questing by yourself. This game feels alive in that sense with the voice chat and all these people that are playing. It's got some other interesting integrations too. Of course, since the game is made by Amazon Game Studios, there's an integration with Twitch. So on the main screen, you can hook up your Twitch account. And then it says, oh, well, like people who watch your stream can qualify for drops. Do you want them to qualify for drops? I'm like, yeah, dude, give them the drops. And then it says, oh, great. Do you want people in game to know that you're streaming? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? I don't know. And as I'm walking around the world, you can see a little like Twitch icon next to people's names so you can tell who all the streamers are, which chat was kind of saying, that's kind of funny. They're saying like, now you know how to spam all your racial slurs. Yeah, of course, there's going to be a little bit of abuse there. I'm sure you could report that, but it's just cool to have those kinds of things. I know it's not the only game out there that is integrating with Twitch. You know, you got Counter-Strike, which will show you like you can watch different people by rank, but you can like sort the directory on Twitch by like what level people are, and you can go watch levels 1 through 9. You know, it's just like little things like that. I expect that out of a modern MMO, and I think it's really cool how they've gone above and beyond to create that kind of experience and try new things in a genre that's so stale. Okay, third thing. The design of the game feels very PvP focused, whereas WoW and Final Fantasy feel very PvE focused, especially Final Fantasy XIV. It feels like a PvE game where PvP was an afterthought. Like they just tacked on the battlegrounds onto Final Fantasy, and that's like not the main purpose of playing Final Fantasy, right? The reason you play Final Fantasy is because you're there for the storyline and the narrative. And it's, I've heard it described as like an RPG that you play with other people, as opposed to like, you know, a game that's focused on PvP. And I know there's other PvP focused games out there that don't do very well. Like Crowfall just came out this month and it did terribly. And so PvP games tend to struggle. New World was designed as a PvP game originally. It was designed as an open world, I think sandbox PvP game. And then they kind of walked that back and said, okay, that's not going to work for us. So they made it as a like they added a lot of PvE elements, but when you play the game, at least to me, it felt like 40% of the experience at least was PvP. So you have the option to flag yourself as PvP or not, which is, it's not new. World of Warcraft has a similar war mode where you can flag yourself as PvP, and it'll give you additional experience for flagging yourself in both games, for turning that on as a reward. But then you have a chance of getting ganked out in the real world. And I just felt like, you know, that combined with the voice chat made it a really fun experience to do the questing and the PvP. But in addition to that war mode, it just feels like the game in general has this whole PvP aspect to it. That's it's not the main focus. Like you can definitely do questing and stuff without it, but it feels like if you're at least open to the idea of PvP, it'll make the game like significantly more fun. There's a lot of like systems in the game. For example, there's a faction system. So instead of like WoW, where there's only 2 factions, Alliance and the Horde, In this game, there's 3 different factions. I'm just going to call them the green, yellow, and purple teams. So you choose one of your teams, and then the map has these kind of like territories, and then you have like little like nodes in those territories that your team is trying to capture those nodes, and then you could upgrade those nodes, and then there's like a siege mode where you attack other guilds' nodes or other factions' nodes, in addition to battlegrounds. So again, I just feel like if you're not playing PvP, you're missing out on a huge portion of this game. And it feels like a PvP focused game that was repurposed to PvE, as opposed to a game that was built for PvE from the ground up, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I actually think it's a really well done piece. But again, I'm only 5 hours in, so take it with a grain of salt, because most of what I'm doing so far is questing, side quests, and then faction quests, which increase my reputation with that faction. It's actually a really interesting mechanic. As each of the territories in the game, let's say there's like 10 territories. I don't know how many there actually are, but in the map, it looked like there were like 10-ish. As you progress your faction in that territory, you can upgrade yourself so that you can get like perks. So it'll give you like increased experience gain while you're in that territory, or reduced taxes, or your gathering speed is increased. So there's like perks that you can level up as you level up in that territory. I know it doesn't really mean a lot since you're not playing the game, but it does make sense as a system. It's kind of cool to like level up a territory, if that doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, number 4. This game is not a subscription-based game. So whereas WoW and Final Fantasy are $15 a month or something like that, New World is $40, and there's no recurring fee. There is a cash shop, and they're going to sell cosmetics at launch. And then they promised, and I know there was some controversy around this, they promised no convenience-based selling things on the cash shop through the end of 2021, which the community said, oh, okay, so basically you're going to sell pay-to-win type stuff starting in 2022. Who knows if they're going to do that or not? Probably. It does feel like there are certain things in the game that are like designed around that as a possibility. They have fast traveling in the game that costs a certain currency. And I would just assume that in 2022, they can just sell that currency so you can fast travel as much as you want. There are like mining pickaxes and axe cutting wood cutting axes, and those have durability. And I would just assume that in 2022, like any company would do, they would sell, really good axes with no durability loss, right? Like I could just see it happening, even though it's not explicitly in the game. I could see that as a possibility. But then again, these other games also have cash shops, so it's not much of a surprise. I would say the main thing when you're looking at an MMO and looking at games with subscription fees and games without subscription fees, I would say games without subscription fees, they have a fixed amount of money that they're ever going to generate from that game, right? So they just basically design the best game that they can with that money, and that's it. And then they release an expansion pack to get more money, right? Which is, by definition, new content that you're, opt in or opt out of that new content. A great example of this is Guild Wars, where they would release new expansions, and that's how they generate more revenue. But they just make the best content that they can with that $40 that they get from you. Whereas in these other ones, you're paying a subscription each month, and the developers of that game are incentivized to keep you subscribed. Like, they want you to keep your subscription for as long as possible. And I think, just purely theoretically, I'm not saying anything about the developers of either game and whether or not they're good or bad people, but the developers of games with a subscription, right? So think like RuneScape subscription, are incentivized to keep you to have that subscription. So they're a little bit incentivized to waste your time. Like, not a lot of your time, because obviously if you're too unhappy about the time that you're wasting, you're going to unsub, but they're a little bit incentivized to waste your time or make things take a little bit longer so that you just keep, your subscription going, and you have to keep it, to get to the end of the content, right? They never want you to reach the end of the content. Whereas like for games with no subscription fees, you can reach the end of the content and you stop playing. Doesn't matter to the company, because like, they're not making any more money off you. Of course, they want you to keep playing because that increases the likelihood that you buy the expansion. But it's not, maybe I'm making a moot point here. I would love for you guys to weigh in on this one, because I feel like, yes, they're both incentivized to get you to keep playing the game. But I feel like the one with the subscription model is a little bit could be tendencies that are a little bit more scummy. I'll give you an example. In RuneScape, I click like the same 10 buttons over and over again, and I have to like watch myself craft this thing. Whereas in New World, when I'm crafting, I just say, I want to make 20 logs. And then like I click a button and the 20 logs are instantly made, right? World of Warcraft, I want to craft 20 like metal bars. I had to watch this timer tick like 30 times. In this game, I want to craft 30 metal bars. I click it and it's done. So just that design aesthetic, like just that design consideration alone makes me go, okay, like I hope that this game that is not subscription based respects my time. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I'm just hoping so. So take it for what it is. Okay, and the last thing is, just my perspective on whether or not you should buy this game. I've bought expansions for WoW and Final Fantasy, and I bought New World, and I do have a full-time job, so I feel like I can afford it. My perspective on it is like games of this quality, if you're a fan of the MMO community, games of this quality do not come out every day. Maybe not even every year. Like new IP in MMOs is a once every few years type of thing. There are lots of MMOs that release every year, but most of them like flop, or like 2 MMOs came out this month. Crowfall, which flopped, and Swords of Legends Online, which is a Chinese port into English. And like that just feels like a WoW clone. So again, like something like brand new and fresh doesn't come along very often. And when you see it, I feel like you have to try it. You know what I mean? And I always buy the new WoW expansions, and Final Fantasy was fun when I played it. And I just feel the same exact way about New World, where it's like if you like the MMO genre, like you have to try this game. You know what I mean? And I think you can make arguments for playing this game or not playing this game. But I would say the thing that they have in common is like it's on that caliber, it's on that tier, it's on that level of game that I just feel like you got to try it if you like the MMO genre. If you're not huge on the MMO genre, wait and see. Like you can watch the streams or watch YouTube videos and see if the game's gonna do well on launch and then buy the game later. But as an MMO fan, one of my biggest regrets is like waiting and missing that first month when everyone's logged in and super hype. There's a couple games that I missed the boat on, like Arcade is one. Star Wars: The Old Republic. I played the beta. I thought it was kind of meh, so I like waited, and then the game came out, and everyone was playing it, and I sat back for like a month, and I was like, I don't know if I want to play this. Then my friends are like, come on, play it. I finally was like, okay, I'll do it. I pulled the trigger on like the 20th day after the launch, and then like everyone decided that game was trash, unsubbed on the 30th day, and then for like 20 days of my sub, I was just like by myself. And that game was like totally dead in the second month. And I just feel like this is that kind of game where it'll be really, really fun for a certain amount of time. I don't know how much time it's going to be, but on the launch of that game, it's going to be really, really fun. And, like MMOs are kind of like festivals, right? Like everyone kind of comes together and that festival's there for a set amount of time. And then people kind of go their separate directions and the festival kind of disappears. And that's the one thing I feel like all these games have in common is like, if a new expansion came out for Final Fantasy, I'd be like, oh, maybe I'll like look into that. Or if a new expansion came out for Guild Wars 2, I'd be like, oh, look into that. And like this game, I feel like hits that bar for me of like, yeah, this is worth trying out. And it's a one-time thing. If I can get a month of fun out of $40, 2 months of fun would be amazing. But if I can get a month of fun out of $40, I'm pretty stoked about it. But I know many of you guys out there are looking for a game that is going to last the test of time. I don't know how long that is for you. 6 months, 12 months. Who knows if it's still going to be fun 12 months from now. But I know that this will be a fun game for at least the first like few weeks. So hopefully that helps influence your buying decision. The game releases on August 31st. The closed beta started on Thursday. What was it? 22nd? No, Tuesday the 20th. And it goes for 2 weeks until August the 3rd. And then all your progress during the closed beta does not save. If you buy it on Steam, you could just like download the beta and just start playing it. And then, but yeah, either way, I'm going to be streaming this game. So you're welcome to shop on my stream, say hi, ask me questions. And I'll probably make a second video about New World when I've played 10 more hours or whatever, and I have more refined thoughts about the game. But that's my initial impressions so far. So I hope this influences your decision as to whether or not you're going to get into the closed beta. And if you end up going in, let me know, and maybe we can try and coordinate playing on the same server together. It'd be kind of fun. All right, catch y'all later. Hope you enjoyed the video. See ya.